Vatican diplomatic immunity upheld in European court. On Tuesday, October 12th, the European Court of Human Rights, or ECHR, ruled that the Vatican cannot be sued in European courts because of its sovereign status as a nation. The background of this case is that beginning in 2011, 24 Belgian, French, and Dutch individuals filed a class action lawsuit in Belgium seeking to sue the Holy See, which is the Catholic Church's governing body. I think of the Holy See as the legal part of the Catholic Church, part of its formation as a legal nation. It's also the Church's jurisprudence. Just kind of how you can conceptualize the role that the branch that the Holy See plays in the overall structure of the church. They were seeking to sue the Holy See for compensation of about 10,000 euros per person for the abuse that they had suffered. They fought for their case over the next several years, but the courts repeatedly ruled that they did not have jurisdiction over the Vatican. After appealing their way up the European court system, finally, the ECHR dismissed the suit and upheld the Vatican's diplomatic immunity. However, the group still has the option to appeal within 3 months of this latest ruling, and I believe that this is their final and last appeal.
I mean, so what's the difference between the Vatican as a sovereign state compared to other? I mean, what's the point of the European Court of Human Rights then, if sovereign status is enough for you not to have jurisdiction? Isn't something beyond just sovereign status? Because if that's the only reason, then no country, they would have jurisdiction over no country.
So this is because this gets complicated. So the people are alleging that they are trying to hold the Holy See liable for this, as opposed to their local archdiocese, where the what happened to them is, presumed to have happened. They're not going to the local Catholic Church, right? Here's the difference. And the local Catholic Church would be within the jurisdiction of the European courts because, like I said, the plaintiffs are French, Dutch, and Belgian. So, but they're not going to the local diocese, which do operate as separate or related entities, in their specific countries. They are going to the heart of the organization. They are going to the Holy See. The Holy See is in Rome. It's in the Vatican. And it is its own nation. So they're saying that they're part of their case of why they're going to the heart of the matter, that they're going to the Holy See and not trying to hold the local archdiocese liable for this, is because of this, let's use their words, structurally deficient way the Catholic hierarchy has covered up and dealt with this issue of abuse within the church. So they're saying because of the systemic cover-up, I
get that.
Yeah, that's why the Holy See is liable.
But that's not my question. My question is, why would France, let's say they could go after the diocese in France, okay? Why is France part of the European Court of Human Rights jurisdiction and not the Vatican?
So instead of going, when you're at the local level, that's an entity, right?
I know, but it's an entity in France. Okay. But why can't they go at entities in the country that is Vatican? Why can't they go after entities within the country of Vatican? When they can't go at entities within the country that is France, they don't come and say, well, France is a sovereign state, has a sovereign status. Well, I mean, okay, but we still, that doesn't make entities in France unreachable to the European Court of Human Rights. So why would Vatican get more immunity than entities in France?
Because the Holy See, like, is a nation. It's not.
So you're saying that if the government of France did something violated human rights, rather than entities within France, then the European Courts of Human Rights cannot go after the government of France?
No. So this
Wait,
is...
no, as in they can't, as in no, that's not what you're saying. Can they or can they not?
That's not my understanding of this ruling.
Sorry, can they go after the government of France or can they not go after the government of France?
They could, because it's different. So like I was saying, they are the jurisdiction comes down to so here's what the previous decision said. Citing the Belgian decision, which was the previous decision, the European Rights Court said that the Pope was not the quote unquote principal of his bishops, that the quote misconduct attributed directly to the Holy See hadn't been committed on Belgian territory, but in Rome, and that neither the Pope nor the Holy See had been present on Belgian territory when the misconduct attributed to the leaders of the church in Belgium had been committed. So that's where the crux of the jurisdiction issue comes in.
So it's not just it's not about them being a sovereign state, having sovereign status. Then it seems like it's about whether you could prove a connection, because if you can prove a connection, you should be able to go after the Vatican the same way you can go after the French government, right? I mean, if the French government or the German government or all of this is within the jurisdiction, so why are we saying this is not in our jurisdiction? Why is every country in Europe within the jurisdiction, and their government and the state as a whole within the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights? But now they're saying, like, coming up with excuses like, oh, but the Vatican has a sovereign status. I don't get it. And this is not within our jurisdiction. Like, what the hell? What's the difference?
Well, like I said, so they are alleging that the Vatican is liable for this cover-up. They're liable because of the systemic cover-up of these harms, right? But then in terms of the jurisdiction, they're saying, well, the entity or people present that you're trying to hold liable actually weren't even in our jurisdiction when you're saying that this happened. So I actually personally don't know what the Vatican's relationship to the European court system is. I'm not exactly sure what the Vatican's relation to the European Union is. So that probably plays into the jurisdictional issue as well. Although it obviously is seated in Europe, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are a party to all these agreements that these countries have with each other in terms of their continental court system. So that's a big piece of this as well. And what I thought was really interesting was that this was a ruling that it was the first time that the Holy See's immunity was ever tested in a European court. And it was a chamber decision, meaning that there were multiple judges ruling on this. And it was decided in a 6-1 ruling. So there was one judge that dissented. And there was really interesting piece on this that I wanted to read. Oh, yes. So in the dissenting opinion, Judge Darian Pavli disputed the Belgian court's findings about the level of authority the Pope exercises over his bishops. Because earlier, the previous court decided that he's not the principal over his bishops. He argued the Belgian judges had not considered evidence that the Pope does in fact hire and fire bishops, and that the Vatican has, as a policy, had imposed a code of silence over the handling of abuse cases worldwide. As a result, Pavli argued the European Tribunal should have found that Belgian judges did indeed deprive the victims access to a court. Because that was the basis of their appeal. They were saying that you had actually denied us the right to a fair trial. And then they're like, well, we don't have jurisdiction, so no, we didn't. But this judges saying, actually, I think you did deprive them the right to a fair trial. Not trial, access to the court. And previously, the Holy See had successfully argued in United States courts that the Pope is not the boss of his bishops. And this was in a similar attempt of victims trying to directly hold the Holy See and the Pope liable for what they experienced. So
this seems to be more of a, not just like sovereign status immunity. I'm actually, the legal stuff, I'm having a hard time understanding what's happening here. But it seems like it's more of a, more in line with like having to prove that there's a connection between the Pope and the Vatican and the Holy See directly and all these other Catholic institutions, right? So I think like if you could establish that, then the Holy See will become fair game, and you could go at it if you could somehow find a way to establish that, right? Wouldn't then more Catholic institutions descending and going their own way against the Vatican, and then there being consequences from that, from the Vatican, be a good proof to show that these are completely connected? Do you know what I mean? Like if more, because we keep kind of saying like more Catholic institutions and coming out and saying like they rebel against the Vatican and they go their own way, and then there's consequences from that, right? Wouldn't these consequences coming directly from the Vatican be an indication that these are related, that these people are answerable to you? Like, what do you think?
Theoretically, that sounds interesting. I don't actually know what the practicality of that is. And this is an interesting comment, and it kind of ties back into what I was talking about earlier in this episode. So Anne Barrett Doyle, the co-founder of the online resource bishopaccountability.org, said that the ruling was a, quote, galling reminder of the Vatican's impunity because of its status as a sovereign state. Quote, the church's dual identity as a religion and a state allows it to shape-shift according to the threat it faces in court, she said in a statement. No other religious institution enjoys the same buffet of legal protections. The result is that the church repeatedly evades justice, and its untold millions of victims are left to suffer. So this is what I was talking about earlier. It can change itself depending on the setting to say, oh, we're just a local religious institution and we have religious freedom, to actually now they're a country and now they have diplomatic immunity.
Okay, I was going to ask this earlier. It just seemed like a ridiculous question to ask, but now with this quote, it doesn't seem as ridiculous as I thought, okay? Is it possible for them to be able, like, do we have any example or any precedent or any legal possibility for them to lose their sovereign status?
Oh, Jesus, I have no idea.
Okay. Have we ever had...
I'm just trying to mentally comprehend what would happen if the Catholic Church lost its sovereign status. It would be...
Do we have any precedent for... We don't, right? Like for a sovereign state to just legally because we give sovereign status to new countries. But do we have ever an example where somebody just lost their sovereign status? We don't have that. I don't think we have that example. They're like, hey, like, we're going to take that away from you.
Quick answer
is no, I think.
No. Is either you choose to give it up by joining a federation, or you're forced to give it up, aka being annexed or conquered by another nation.
Yeah.
That's how you lose your sovereignty.
I know that's how you lose it, but we don't have an example of like legally. We usually, when a country gets a sovereign status, it's just like the UN a legal process, like, hey, here, now you're a country, yay, this is your Independence Day and congratulations, you're a baby country, right? But we don't have an example. Like, it usually looks a lot more ugly and by force or military invasion where a country loses sovereign status. We don't have a legal path to, like, you don't get to be a country, you've been a naughty country, and we're just going to legally take it away from you. Like, we don't have that. That would be the first.
There's no unilateral authority to declare that a nation is or is not sovereign. However, no other nation will recognize your sovereignty, and the United Nations won't either, then you pretty much don't have any, regardless of what you say. The main way the nations lose their sovereignty is by being conquered. They can also lose it by a merger. So when two countries become one country.
So we either have to make the Catholic Church so unpopular that eventually there's a movement globally where people are pushing their governments to not recognize the Vatican as a country, right? And that would be a popular thing for politicians to do. And then, like, you start with the first country that we're going to stop recognizing Vatican as a state, and then eventually we'll follow, and then eventually we'll stop being recognized as a country in the UN. So either that, or, hear me out here, we get Italy to invade the Vatican.
Oh my, that's not going to happen. It kind of reminds me of how the Pakistani passport says this passport is valid for all countries of the world except Israel. Like, if people started doing that for the Vatican.
Yes, we do have precedent for it. We do. We have many countries not recognizing, I mean, that's wrong, not recognizing Israel as a state. But given that we have a precedent for it, we could just use that model. And countries, we need the first country to issue a passport by saying that we don't recognize the Vatican as a state. Oh my, yes, we need to push. Which country would be the first one to go for it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So with this whole issue of the court authority and the diplomatic immunity, I was thinking about it this way, and this might not be a legally correct way to think about it, but this was just kind of how I was trying to conceptualize it. So, like, I know in the US, like, I can sue my government, right? Because it's something that they did to me, or I'm alleging that they did to me. Presumably it happened in their jurisdiction or by the action of one of their departments, right? So you can sue a country, or you can sue departments of a country. But I can imagine in terms of jurisdiction, it would be a lot harder for me to do it if what happened to you is not actually in that country. So, like, if something happened to me, I can't go randomly sue the country of France. I'm not a citizen. Like, you know, it didn't happen to me in France. You know, like, that's how I was trying to kind of make sense of it.
Right. We just have to find a country that the Catholic Church is the least popular in and get the people of that country to pressure their government to stop recognizing the Catholic. It would be the first politician, like, it has to be a good way to gain votes, you know.
Hey guys, if you're a fan of Blasphemy and Sexy Callie, you know, like me, then you need to be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, link in the description below. Because if you subscribe, we will send you a free copy of our Blasphemous Art ebook. And let me tell you, it is the tastiest blasphemy that you can find anywhere available today. And we are so generous with our blasphemy that we continue to send you more blasphemy every week. So make sure to subscribe, link in the description below.